Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews, and today we are going to check out yet another of these absolutely awesome Recur models, and this is a very interesting one, as this is their Mamenchisaurus. But as you could probably already see just looking at it, it has a bit of a different look to it as far as what you would usually see on a Mamenchisaurus, and I must say that I love the look of this figure because it's like the perfect interpretation of what a vintage Mamenchisaurus would and should look like. Like, it's low to the ground, the legs are kind of spread out away from the body, the neck is kind of low to the ground and stuff. It just has a super old school looking coloration to it with like really dark kind of like earthy tones of green and stuff. Like, this is exactly what I would expect a Mamenchisaurus to look like in a film from like the 20s up until like the 90s. I would say I would expect it to look something like this, and I love that. I love vintage dinosaurs. I always have, I always will. So this is a really cool, in my opinion, interpretation of what a vintage Mamenchisaurus would look like. We've had quite a few different Mamenchisaurus figures released over the years by many companies, but not too many of them have that kind of vintage old school look. So let's go ahead and jump straight to a closer look right now. So starting up here at the head sculpt of our Mamenchisaurus, you can see that from a detailing standpoint, it's actually really quite nice. You can see some very nice looking skin texture. The nostrils are sculpted out there. The eyes are also sculpted out quite nicely and painted with a yellow and a black pupil. The mouth is open, and you can see the teeth inside the mouth are quite nicely painted and sculpted. We have a very dark pinkish type of a color, kind of bordering on a reddish. And it does include the tongue inside the mouth, a very realistic tone of color, I would say, for the inside of the mouth of the dinosaur, as well as sporting a really nice gloss coat in there. The tones of color that you see on the face are just like some different variations of greens. Seems like maybe they've done a little dry brushing to make some of that detail pop on the head sculpt of the Mamenchisaurus, which definitely looks quite nice. And you can see that this side of the head also looks really cool. Again, having a really almost like a vintage type of a look to the head sculpt of this Mamenchisaurus. As you start to lead down into the neck, you can see some really nice skin texture, as well as the spinal column elaborated up here on the back of the neck. You also see some nice dark stripes that start to pick up, and they run down the course of the neck. The texturing again looks really nice, and you have lots of really nice creasing and everything in the skin here of the neck. As you move down the course of the neck, it starts to, of course, widen up and gets very, very thick as you get closer to the base of the neck. You can see some nice skin wrinkles here to the underside of the neck, as well as the throat, quite beautifully elaborated on that insanely long Mamenchisaurus style neck. And you can also see that there is a nice dark wash so that the detail pops really beautifully throughout the entire figure. As you reach down here into the body, you can see the shoulder blade a little bit protruding right there, but you can also see that the muscle definition is very nicely displayed in the front leg. And considering again that this is a very large sauropod, it would have to have very strong muscles to carry its body weight, so that is nicely shown in the sculpt. You can also see a very smooth transition between the colors as we lead from that green to kind of a lighter green, and then to an off-white here, or almost actually like a light shade of green for the underbelly of our Mamenchisaurus. The legs are very thick and again quite bulky, and like I had stated earlier, you can see right here how they are kind of like spread out away from the body, having that super old school style look to it, a very lizard-like look, and I just cannot stress enough how much I love that about this figure. You can see more of that kind of like dark green striping right here in the leg, and more of that nice wash, how they've applied that to the lighter areas to make the detail pop quite beautifully. The nails are sculpted out quite nicely down here and painted with a nice glossy black, so they shine quite beautifully, and the foot sculpt also looks quite nice. As you lead back up into the body, you can see some nice skin texture here in the stomach region. Again, that wash is allowing the detail to pop quite beautifully in the stomach region as well. You can also see some of the skin kind of stretching off of the stomach here with the rear leg. The dinosaur is in kind of almost a neutral position. You don't see too much as far as like difference between the leg positioning on this side as opposed to the opposing side. You can see some more of that nice dark striping that runs down the side of the stomach region of our Mamenchisaurus right here. Some more creasing in the stomach leading up into the shoulder area right there. Same deal back here for like the hip region. You can continue to see the spinal column running along the back of our Mamenchisaurus. The thigh back here is very nicely sculpted out. Again, the texturing to the skin is gorgeous throughout this entire figure, and you have more of that very nice muscle definition shown back here in the thigh. You have the kneecap present right here, kind of like some creasing and stuff in the joint of the knee, as well as yet another nice looking foot sculpt. The ankle is kind of elaborated a little bit right there. You also have some nice painted nails with some nice glossy black back here as well. And then leading up into the tail, you can kind of see like some skin movement there stretching off of the tail as you lead out the length of course, our shorter tail on a Mamenchisaurus. You can see it's nice and short and also has some more of those stripes that run out the course of the tail. There is a bit of a bend going on, a turn in the tail, which looks quite nice. On the opposing side, you're not going to see too much difference, but the dinosaur does have its head turned slightly to its left. So the head sculpt is kind of facing away from us a little bit on this side, but you can again see that the head sculpt looks good like we had looked at before. As you lead down the course of the neck, again, you can see those really nice, very appealing and darker tones of green with those nice dark stripes that are abundant throughout the entire model. You can continue to see how nice the actual detailing aspect of the Mamenchisaurus is as you lead down into the body. Again, the actual detail throughout this entire figure is really quite phenomenal. Recur does a fantastic job as far as like sculpting out detail on their figures. And you have lots of movement, again, shown down here as far as like skin stretching, skin wrinkling, all of the stuff you would expect to see. It's beautifully brought to life here by Recur on this insanely appealing looking Mamenchisaurus model. You have some very nice muscle definition again, sculpted out in the front leg. The elbow is present, as well as a beautifully sculpted out foot with some very nicely painted nails yet again. And then leading back here into the thigh, you can see that the thigh is very nicely sculpted, just like the opposing side, but we're not really going to see too much difference on this side. You can see that the leg on this side is facing out a little bit further than what you see on that one, so there's basically just a little turn in the ankle on this one that differs from the opposing side, just giving it again a little bit of difference as far as the sculpt goes. And you can see again some more nice wrinkling and everything going on back here as you lead out the length of our very small Mamenchisaurus tail. The underside as well is just beautiful as far as a detailing standpoint goes. Like there is just so much going on down here on the underside. And you also have the booklet that comes with the Recur figures, which is really cool to have. And as you open it up, you can see the scale of the dinosaur. Again, the product size as well. You have some information on the dinosaur as well as kind of like a question and answer area. And then if I can turn the next page, we have information on Recur in general. Really fun little booklets that they include. But this Mamenchisaurus is super, super cool, and I absolutely love it because it's the best interpretation in my collection of a vintage style Mamenchisaurus, and I just absolutely adore vintage dinosaurs, so this figure is definitely a surefire win in my book. As far as a size goes, being a Mamenchisaurus, you're going to expect some pretty significant size, or at least in the length department. So for a length on the tail, you are looking at closing in on about 16.5 inches or about 42 centimeters. So again, it's a very long figure, and considering it's a Recur figure, you obviously will expect a decent size straight away. As far as a height to the top of the head here, about 6.25 inches or around the 16 centimeter range. For a size comparison, there is Mr. Papo T-Rex, the Attack Pack Colovosaurus, and Robert Muldoon from the Mattel Jurassic World toy line, and you can without question see here again that the size of the Mamenchisaurus is quite impressive overall. That long neck really shines overall here looking at it with these other figures in comparison, but again, it's not absolutely massive, but it absolutely sports an impressive size. So this Recur Mamenchisaurus is another beautiful figure in the long line of beautiful Recur figures, and this time it's really nice to have a very fun vintage style to the figure. You don't see too many vintage dinosaurs created by Recur, but you know, every once in a while they'll release one like a tripod position like T-Rex or something with the tail on the ground, and I love when they do it because again, I am a gigantic fan of that vintage, that old retro style look to dinosaurs. It's what I grew up on as a child, so I'll always have a very nice soft spot for that look of dinosaurs. And it's something that, again, every time I can get a new one, it just kind of takes me back straight to my childhood. And just generally gets me so excited. And when I had seen this one on Amazon, I instantly knew I wanted it, because as soon as I saw it, I was like, wow, that is a really cool looking, super vintage style for a Mamenchisaurus. So I don't really have any good looking vintage Mamenchisaurus in my collection that look quite as nice as this one does. So I was really excited when I had seen it, and again, super happy to now have it here in my collection. The actual sculpting aspect of the figure is insanely well done. Beautiful, very high detailed sculpt, showing off some incredible skin texture throughout, as well as lots of skin wrinkles and creasing and everything throughout the course of the entire figure. Just beautiful from a sculpting standpoint. The dinosaur's just kind of standing in a very neutral position, so there's not too much going on as far as the sculpt goes, but it honestly gives me the feeling of like this Mamenchisaurus kind of standing in a pond or a swamp or something. Like you always saw old dinosaurs portrayed as, especially sauropods in like old books and stuff. They were always kind of like standing in a swamp and only their neck would be exposed, and that's kind of the feeling that I get for like this. It definitely has that look to it, and I love that as well about the figure. So I'm very happy with that kind of neutral looking pose on the dinosaur, because again, giving me that super vintage feeling, and even the pose as well. And the paint application is super nice looking on the figure, very smooth as far as the application goes, and that as well is another vintage look to the figure, because I feel like that's exactly how dinosaurs looked whenever I would see them in books and stuff as a child. They were always given those nice dark tones of color, and that's kind of followed through with me as an adult. I always like sauropods to have darker tones of color, so even if this was a more modern take on a Mamenchisaurus, the darker tones of color would work well for me, but it really works well as far as that vintage look goes also. So this is a huge recommendation from me. If you are a fan of vintage dinosaurs, this one is a great choice. So if you are interested, make sure you check the links in the description, as I will have links to both the Recur website as well as the Recur Amazon store, where you can purchase this or any other awesome Recur figures today. And make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.